Good. Okay, I'll go ahead and bring the regular meeting of Tuesday, June 20th, 2017, City of Angels Camp to order. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We came out of closed session earlier. We had 4 different items, and direction was given to our city administrator regarding conference with the labor negotiator and conference with real property negotiations pursuant to section 54956.8. And we also gave direction to our city attorney with the conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, and the final item was more information only and no action was taken. Let's see. The approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes they want to make to the agenda?
No.
I'll entertain a motion. Oh, Susan?
Yes. We have one additional candidate on our council appointment
Thank you.
interviews, and that is Trina Cachero.
Thank you for that. Okay. That's, I have her name over here someplace. Okay. Any other changes? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilperson Matilde, seconded by Vice Mayor Fallendorf. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Okay, we have a consolidated report that shows our staff updates. Are there any questions regarding the consolidated report?
I have a question. We have in the engineering and public works, it's stated in there that the backhoe is inoperable and 2 trucks are unable to start. I was wondering what's going on with that. Do we have answers of, why is the backhoe inoperable and why aren't the trucks starting?
Yeah, well, I was going to get into the backhoe at the council workshop tomorrow, and so there'll be more information, but basically the repairs are pretty large on the backhoe. And so, right now it's a decision point whether or not to keep it, sell it, get rid of it. So that's why I was going to bring it up tomorrow.
Okay.
And the trucks are just old. They're just really, really old. And so we just are wearing out the equipment.
Are we looking at, is it a starter, is it the entire engine, or do we have an answer of?
Most of these are electronics.
Okay.
And so one of them they got fixed with a sensor, and the other one's still down.
Okay. Any other questions?
No questions, just comments.
Comments? Comments are okay.
One is, I'm glad to see that we're moving forward with the Mark Twain site. I've been wondering what's been going on with that, so I'm glad to see that it's on the radar, and we'll be seeing that soon. And then the other one is thanking PD for putting officers at the fair. I know it's about a month late, because it was a big difference compared to last year, having that, so thank you.
Also, the museum, I guess, has been getting good reviews, which is nice, online. And then also, I noticed that in the month of July, it stated that Calaveras County teachers can get in free, and they're hoping to encourage teachers to come in, see what the museum has to offer, and hopefully that will spur interest in field trips. So if we could get that word out Also, I was wondering, I did have a lady ask me today, does that include homeschooling teachers? And I said, I have no idea. So, yes, it does. Oh, good. Well, I will try and put that out there also, because the museum is amazing. You know, we really do have an awesome museum, so kudos to you.
Okay.
Anything going, and what's going on with the Lode Motel?
Is Steve here?
That's, yeah.
Oh. Is this it? No. Dave, can you answer that, or? And while you're up, there's also another property on South Main was mentioned in the report too, that basically shows 6 months of the owners ignoring us, and I was kind of curious what's going on there.
Is that on the code enforcement?
Yeah. Already.
That one I haven't seen. I'll have to take a look at those. But regarding the load, we're continuing to work with the property owner. We're working on a major code enforcement issue right now with Derek over by Mark Twain Elementary. And once that one is closed, which we think will be closed here pretty quickly, we'll be moving forward with the load. We're still trying to contact the property owner we haven't left him in the lurch. We're still making sure that he's notified that we're still wanting him to maintain that building and get on it, and that we are going to continue to be sending notices in that at this point. So once we conclude with the one on Main, because that's a really big one, this is going to be another really big one. And so on the other ones, I'll look to see where we're at, give you an update. I'll update Mary to see where we're at on all those. And that way you'll have one up there. I haven't seen the latest one on code enforcement yet, so I'll be able to give you an update.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions regarding the consolidated report, staff updates?
No.
Anyway, okay. Moving on to council updates. Councilperson Matilde.
Went to the Destination Angels Camp meeting. I just have to say kudos to Destination Angels Camp. They are really trying to bring business into town and also work with outlying areas, and they're just doing a lot in regards to the community. I don't know if anyone went to the food truck festival. It was a larger hit than anyone expected. It was great. I just think they're doing a great job, and just want to give that shout out to them.
Last Thursday, I attended the league meeting down in Manteca, and a lot of it I think will be addressed during our budget regarding SB1 and other legislation that's coming down the pipe. The week before, I forget the date now, I attended the league meeting down in Sacramento, and there was big discussion, which I have talked to Dave Myers about, regarding stormwater, which I feel would be a concern when we start looking into rates coming up with the sewer and water, because it's starting to look like that's going to start being maybe a state mandate. And then another thing that came up was a bill regarding wells. And I was told at that meeting that most of the counties have been advocating to get that changed, and they were waiting on what was negotiated with the rural county committees on some of those bills regarding wells and water systems in different counties and cities. And so I just want to put it on their radar if that starts coming down, something we might need to look at, because it will impact us more here than it will in more urban areas down in the Stockton, Sacramento area. There was also a presentation on the Delta and the new pipes that they are looking to put in to help with the requirement with the fish. So it was a really good presentation by the water board regarding the delta and how the effects of the Stanislaus, the Moke rivers up here, and the timeline of that project, and also dam update. We had an update on dams, and after the Orville spill, the mandate that they're starting to recreate at the state on all the dams, especially up in this area with Maloney's and up the hill. So it was a pretty good presentation. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, we're at the COG meeting, they had a project review of the cities and the whole county, but in the city, like of Angels with the Main Street Plan, all the different projects are really moving along and putting things together so that we can see some real changes in the future here.
Great. And I attended the UWPA meeting, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel regarding some revenues generated by our power plants to help offset our water delivery system. I also went to the food truck fair. About 20 people. We had a little family reunion in town, so I brought 20 people down there. Unfortunately, we were too late to get food. They gotta have more than 4 trucks. Next time, hopefully, they'll get the 12 to 14 trucks. But we still had a good time and went to Round Table instead. Okay, now it's time for our public comment, and public comment is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter that's not on the agenda. So if you'd like to talk about anything else, we can either get it agendized or get you your answers. So anybody would wish to make any comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are expected to be routine. They'll be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested person may request that consent items be removed for discussion. There are 5 items. The first is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on June 6th. Second is Planning Commission appointment. Reappoint Robert Moncada to the Planning Commission to serve as commissioner for a 3-year term. The third is Museum Commission appointments. Reappoint Tad Follendorf, Ron Rivera, and Marilyn Smith to the Museum Commission to serve as commissioners for 3-year terms. Fourth is adopt Resolution 17-21, a resolution authorizing continuing appropriations for city operations beginning July 2017, until which time the city formally adopts its 2017-18 budget. And then finally, adopt Resolution 17-22, a resolution authorizing the appropriations limit at $3,259,981 for fiscal year 2017-18. Are there any items that anybody would like to see removed for discussion? Okay. I'd like to remove items B and C, the Planning Commission appointments and Museum Commission appointments, for discussion. So I'll entertain a motion on items A, D, and E, and I will be abstaining from item A. How's that?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Follendorf, a second by Councilperson Matilde to approve items A, D, and E. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Except I abstain on A. So A passes 3-0 and abstention. D and E are 4-0. As far as item number B, the reason I pulled these out is because whenever there's a volunteer, I like to make sure those volunteers are given proper respect. And I'd like to just thank Robert Moncada for volunteering again to serve on the Planning Commission. And I'd also, under Section C, like to offer the same thanks to Tad Follendorf, Ron Rivera, and Marilyn Smith for their continuing efforts in that area. A lot of times, and it'll come out in the newspapers real soon, grand jury reports say we don't have enough interest in volunteers in our city. And I say nuts to that. I appreciate the volunteers, and without volunteers, where would we be? So, unless there's any other discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve those 2 items.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Follendorf, second by Councilperson Herman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0, and again with my thanks. The next item on the agenda, City Council candidate interviews. We are very fortunate to have 4 people applying for 1 spot. Again, thanks for the volunteers, thanks for your willing to be regardless of the outcome, thanks for stepping up and be willing to serve. The four people are Trina Cachero, Clarence Hartley, Joseph Oliveira, and Anthony Terrell. I believe Mr. Terrell couldn't make it tonight. It was a family reunion, but he still is in the mix. And I recognize Joe and Clarence. I don't recognize Trina. Are you here? Thank you. Okay, so we have the other three. The way this will work is we'll kind of go in alphabetical order. We'll interview each of you separately. While it's not mandatory, we would request that the other three, or two in this case, leave the room while we're interviewing the one. And we'll all reconvene, and by motion, we'll nominate a person to be appointed to the position. Susan, did I get that right?
You got it.
All right.
So if Mr. Hartley and Mr. Oliveira will come with me, I'll give you a place to sit that's not out in the heat.
So Trina, step to the podium, please.
Okay.
In case you're wondering, I had 2 knees redone last year.
Oh, my goodness.
That was last year.
Such empathy.
Okay. Trina, welcome, and thank you for stepping forward.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Veronica, you want to start us off with questions?
Okay. So I'm wondering, have you looked into?
I'm sorry, let me, real quick. Would you like to, I knew I'd screw this up somehow. Would
Yeah,
you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm like, okay.
Well, I am a lifelong resident of Calaveras County. I have 2 children that attend school here in the Mark Twain School District. We live here in Angels Camp. Well, I guess Altaville is the correct name for where we live.
Angels Camp's fine.
The Postal Service sees it differently. So we've been here about 1.5 years in the home that we're currently in, and I just have always been interested in serving in a public capacity in ways that help make our community a better place to be. And no matter what I'm doing, I'm always trying to help enrich the community that I'm in. One of the things that we did, we've worked pretty feverishly the last year. When we moved to our home, we had a lawn, a beautiful lawn with sprinklers and all that stuff. And we took all of the lawn out. The neighbors thought we were crazy. And we put in a garden. We had to rototill it 1,000,000 times, but we put in a garden. And it's supposed to be a community garden. And the thought is just that there's a lot of elderly people in our community who maybe don't drive, and I know I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but this is sort of like who I am. No matter what I'm doing, I'm kind of always looking toward how to help others in our community and teach my kids the same thing. So.
Great, thank you. Okay, Veronica?
First of all, that's very commendable. I like that. Second of all, what do you see for the future of Angels Camp?
What do I see as far as, that's a pretty broad question.
Well, and I meant it to be broad because I figure everybody's going to have their own perspective and what's most important to you. So if you wanted to go in that direction, that's fine.
As far as for the City of Angels Camp, I see the importance of it being a tight-knit community as one of its major assets, a community that helps each other and are there for each other, the businesses, help support local sports teams, and I see that continuing no matter how big we grow. I think that our growth needs to be measured, and we need to look at infrastructure and try to not grow too quickly because we have limited resources. So definitely need to grow. That's important because our tax revenue is so important, but it's good to have a variety of people helping with that growth, because people come from all different backgrounds and have the ability to have that wonderful input. Like my dad worked for the water treatment plants when I was a kid, and he knows all about water infrastructure and that sort of thing, and he served on different boards and things like that, and I saw how different contributions from different community members in volunteer capacities really matter. So I'd like to see it grow. I'd like to see there be more for young people to do. I mean, in general.
Good. Okay. What is the number one asset you believe you can bring to the council?
Well, I'm a listener. I do like to talk, but the first thing that I do before I start talking is I observe and I listen and I take notes and I think before I talk. So my asset would be probably keeping quiet and not throwing my 2 cents in until I actually have thought about my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I noticed here, when looking at your application, I would love to see the vacant buildings downtown occupied. Yay. So-
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Yes, it would.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts or ideas in that direction that you can see how to, something to go, so that we can go in that direction and accomplish that?
Well, I mean, I think that it's important to be out in the community talking and getting to know the community better and assessing our population to see what the needs are. But there are resources out there that we're not utilizing maybe as well as we could be. For instance, I have a child who has special needs, and there aren't resources up here, places for her to go, but there is money for that, and there are resources for that, but somebody's got to get in there and organize. So that's something I would be interested in looking at, especially for kids with special needs, because they're often isolated, and not just special needs, but kids that are just isolated because they get in trouble, and it's just important to recognize that and to try to do something about it instead of just saying those are the trouble kids. There's just a lot of it. I see it everywhere I go. So I know about like Umpqua Bank is where I bank. One of the gals in there is a member of it's called TAG, and it's an acronym for, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's for autism, and it's a community of banks that have gotten together and different business leaders that create accounts and scholarships and grants and such for supporting young people and older people that have special needs, including and mostly for autism. Tri-County Autism Group, that's what it is. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Going forward this year, probably our biggest issue we have right now is that we've been running in the red, our budgets, every year, and we're running out of money. What is the most difficult thing you, either in business or personal life, don't get too personal, what's the most difficult choice you've had to make regarding budgets or money or cuts?
Probably the most, I'm going to be personal because I don't have a lot of shame. I'm pretty upfront. When I had 2 very young kids, I had a brand new baby and a 3-year-old with autism at home. The market crashed. We owned our home in Copperopolis, and it was mortgaged to the hilt because we had a child with special needs and we needed to do a lot of things for her. And we couldn't get out from underneath our house. I lost my job, and we lost our home. It was a terrible choice to make, because even if I worked 3 jobs to try to keep us above water, it would be 25 years probably before we would be okay with what we owed on our house, before we would break even. So it was a terrible choice to make. And, yeah, filing bankruptcy, living through that whole experience was very eye-opening and very humbling. And now, when I live somewhere, when I go somewhere, and when we bought our home, I no longer look at the tile countertops and thought, wow, those should really be granite. I don't have that thinking anymore. That's changed a lot for me. I'm very appreciative for what we have and see the value in what we already have.
Great, thank you very much. Any closing statement, or bring on the next person? Okay, Trina, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you don't mind following Susan back, we'll bring out
She can
Clarence.
stay in.
Oh, you can stay here, that's right.
She already heard the
She's already
question.
talked.
Yeah, as long as you're a listener and not a talker, yeah. Why should I have Clarence go first and save him the law?
Is there a survivor out here? You. Oh, it's me so far. Well, hello, everybody.
Go ahead to the podium.
I'm going as fast as I can.
I wasn't being pushy.
No, I had 2 knee replacements last year, and in spite of the mayor's cheerful greeting, hello, Mayor.
Hello, Claire.
In any event, I'm happy to be here again and glad that there's an opportunity to help. I have a fair amount of background. I've been in the county 40 years. I founded Central Sierra Bank in 1981, and then we sold Central Sierra Bank in 2003. It's a shame you didn't buy some. We made quite a lot of money. But it's an interesting thing. In 1981, when we started the bank, the county was on hard times. Things were bad, and the general attitude is they're getting worse. Well, I said, no matter how bad you are, how bad things are, you're not going to get me. And you never did. You never did. A lot of the stuff that you see, including traffic, and I kind of kick myself every time I drive through it to see all that traffic. But the things have improved. Calaveras County is now more like another city, more like another town. It's a wonderful place to live. Maybe I should spend just a little more time on my business experience. I was in management in business for 46 years. I was the chairman of the board of Central Sierra Bank for 22 years. I was the president of the bank for 22 years. I founded the bank, and I was there, nobody? 22 years. That's a good one. That's a good one. And because of my office was in San Andreas, and the county board was in San Andreas, I spent most of my promoting time in San Andreas. If I can brag just a little, I want to do it. I'm going to do it anyway. You couldn't get a permit approved in the county because we had really 2 groups of people. We had those that didn't want growth and those that didn't want more people. Is that the same? Well, that's about how it worked. So we made a lot of construction loans. We provided a lot of job opportunities. I remember when Amanda and Tad and their mother redid the mansion. I hadn't met her at that time, but I don't know she has to recuse herself or anything. But I've known her that long.
Find an open door.
And I have been given credit that if there were no Clarence, there'd be no Mark Twain Hospital in the county. I was one of the founders of the the foundation of the hospital committee. I served for the hospital for 30 years. I did a lot of things. I drove through here with Barton Steveno, and he asked me what I thought about this place. I told him I didn't think he could miss. It was a can't miss. And I wanted to touch on a couple of other subjects, and no hostility, please. And it's about the issue about marijuana, how to lose an election in 5 easy seconds. Well, here's what I hear out there, and I'm gonna tell you, and then I'm gonna tell you what I feel. As part of my talks at the San Andreas Government Center, I said basically our property here is made up of bare land and marginal land at that. So here's what I think from my 40 years experience and so forth, is that we do need to do things to generate more income, more jobs, keep our kids at home, all of that stuff. I'm not here to speak for or against marijuana. What I have come up with is this idea that if we were to take and plant other things, orchards, grapes, what have you, couldn't we accomplish the same thing that we're doing with this, I hope you like that idea, Mary. In other words, there's so many things that we could do that wouldn't diminish the quality of living here. I know a lot of people, I've been here a long, long time. What I hear repeatedly is, we don't want marijuana. And like I say, I'm not here to take a stand on it. I'm just telling you about an idea that I had. Now, there are ways, and there are universities all over this fine state where you can get help from state universities to plant orchards, to plant grapes, and so forth. And they will help a lot with that. And please, don't anybody kill me while I...
Okay, Clarence, we actually have a few questions that we'd like to ask real quick.
Please do.
And be a little brevity would be appreciated.
I'm ready for questions.
Awesome.
I didn't know we were going to do it like that.
Yeah, no problem. Veronica, you have a question?
Okay. First of all, thank you for applying and having an interest in the city. And sorry. And what do you see for the future of Angels Camp?
Remember, you're talking to a banker who is interested in seeing people prosper. And here's my long-term attitude has been, you innovate or you die. In other words, you either make things better or you allow them to go worse. I give you my private opinion. I was going to do it anyway on the marijuana thing. It's a rotten thing to do, and that's about as candid as I can be. And I will speak my mind. I have done so for 46 years. But if we don't grow and if we don't give job opportunity to people, and I know there's people going to be angry at me for saying this, but if we don't grow and prosper, we're going to go down the tubes. And you watch, I probably lost 3-4 votes right there. But if you watch any city that doesn't grow, they will diminish in quality, diminish in jobs, and so forth. Next question.
Yep. Hey,
Hi again.
what is the number one ask that you believe you can bring to the council?
Well, I know plenty of them. I do have a couple written down. One is I've been doing budgets for 40 years. We start with that one, okay? And actually, we balance those budgets. We balance those budgets every day. When I sold the bank, we had 7 offices and 85 employees. We never had a red quarter. Never had a red quarter. I always found ways of being in the black. Now, I'm aware of a lot of different things, and I wasn't always the most popular boss, but I made more money than most of them. I think we need road improvements, we need to work on water, police and fire department, which are a city's primary. Now, let's see, what other quick things could I throw at you? Oh, I did all the legal work for about 40 years. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a threat there. When I added up how much money we made at the bank over those 22 years, it turned out to be 50% a year on our original investment every year for 22 years. Now that's average, simple, but it's not. So had you invested, you'd be like a lot of other people say, I wish I'd have put more in. I ran the whole thing the whole time. Any other question?
It was about, you had listed on your application about budgets. And so are you familiar with the city's budget and budgeting and our financial situation? So I wondered for you to comment a little bit more on the budget.
Well, I'd have to be bluffing if I did that, because I have not had the opportunity to review your budget. All I hear is we don't have any money. We don't have any money. And what's one of the reasons I'm here?
And that kind of stole my question.
Well, that is one of the things I'd like to go back to regarding the orchards and the like. Instead of doing the marijuana business, why don't we do orchards and things of that nature that add? You ever been to Napa Valley? I mean, to me, it's quite a positive. I've been to quite a few places.
So, okay, so along those lines, real quickly, what would you do to encourage the private sector to move in that direction? Maybe it's not as economically feasible, or?
Well, I've thought of that.
Okay.
I think the first thing we'd have to do is find a person or two to go to one of our many state colleges and see what they have available that would help us along those lines.
Okay. Okay. Clarence, thank you.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. You can just have a seat. You don't need to go back in the room there.
All right, thank you. I'm just looking to see if I had any big problems over here.
Okay, Joe, thank you for your patience. And you're last to go, so maybe you can make a statement out of it. Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here and what you can bring to the table?
I'm about an 18-year resident of Angels, and I'm here primarily, present circumstances excluded, because of what appeared the last election, had a little trouble getting people to turn out for the voting, for the electoral process. And I thought, I've got a practical business background. I've dealt with budgets, dealt with labor unions, dealt with purchasing, acquisition, all things that I think would benefit the council. So I threw my hat in the ring.
Thank you for that. We have a few questions for you. Veronica, you want to start us out?
Joseph, thank you for your interest and stepping up. And also, my question is, what do you see for the future of Angels Camp?
I see a continuing struggle from a financial point of view. It's a fairly fixed base. It's pretty difficult to make things grow. I heard you comment earlier about the good work that Destinations Angels Camp is doing. I think that's a worthwhile endeavor, and if there were a way to turn Main Street in Angels into a Main Street like Murphy's has, I think we'd be on the way. But I don't know what the secret is for that critical anchor business down there. Maybe it's going to be the hotel, I don't know. But I see it for the future, just a kind of a continuing struggle until there's some kind of a breakthrough. Meantime, probably need to consider any and all things that could potentially generate revenue and mitigate expense.
Okay.
What is the number one asset you believe you can bring to the council?
I've been told that I can bring some kind of a calm voice of reason, fairly analytical, don't jump to conclusions, like to hear all the sides, take great pains to educate myself on what the issues are, and I think I can contribute based on the experiences that I spoke to earlier. My career at AT&T was not on a big scale, but it touched a lot of different bases and different aspects of business, the things that I mentioned earlier. And I think all of those things can be brought to bear here.
On your application, you had some suggestions of improvement. You said to find revenue sources through improved planned growth. Did you have something in mind about those revenue sources, or is that in general?
Not beyond what I spoke to. I'm not familiar with all the input and the options that the city might have at the moment. I see a little leaf on the table there, and I know that's an issue for the city, and maybe that's revenue, maybe it's not. Maybe it's more trouble than it's worth. But there it is. It probably needs to be considered. I think our best bet is with Destination Angels Camp and some kind of an effort to get some anchor business down there that really takes hold. But I can't be specific. I don't have a particular thing in mind. I've seen, just on another note, I've made observations in other small towns. And I know this is money sensitive, but if the town was pleasing to the eye as you drove through it, with aesthetics and lighting and things like that, and added to its quaintness, maybe those things have already been considered, but that might be a start to get people talking about what a quaint little place it is.
Yeah, we are working on a Main Street improvement program and Angels Trail and things like that to make that happen. Even if those are successful, they're going to take some time to click in. So you kind of hit on the head. The financial, there's a struggle, and so we're in budget time, and the appointees are going to have to jump right in and start dealing with budgets. What kind of experience do you have in making tough decisions? We can grow revenue, but if the revenue doesn't grow, you got your other choices to cut expenses or borrow. And what experiences do you have, maybe some tough choices you've had to make, personal or business, but just where you feel like you've had to make tough decisions and where do we want to go?
Yeah. In the business world, in my opinion, the toughest decisions were always around people. With AT&T, I went through 4 acquisitions. And each time, the benefit of an acquisition is centralization, downsizing of personnel. And each time we did that, we went through that. And you had to sit down and you had to tell people you didn't need them anymore for whatever reason. Either it was directed to a call center consolidation or a purchasing effort that was going to be centralized in another state. Those were always really tough. Following right behind that with personnel again were performance issues. They're tough to handle, but you need to step up to them. And you need to have pretty clear expectations. And you need to hold people accountable to those expectations. And then following behind that, in terms of difficulty, it's always been in fleet operations at AT&T, people think about the bigness of the corporation. But when it came budget time, you were fighting for whatever your interest was, telephone poles, cables, cars, trucks, central office switches, whatever it was. And you needed a case that supported your particular position. And I would expect, the same thing occurs here. Hopefully it does, and people have to justify what they're after. But those decisions are tough. And in the business world, it's usually around business, it's usually around revenue. If the decision involves revenue, then it has a clear advantage over something that's, just expense mitigation. So personnel decisions around making cuts are just tough.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Okay, now we have the tough part, dealing with personnel. Follow up on that a little bit.
Scott,
Oh, Susan?
the next step in this process is public comment.
Oh, okay, thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to make a comment about these candidates? And remember, Tony Terrell is also still, even though he couldn't be here, he is still a consideration. So are there any comments on behalf of any of these folks that have stepped up and put their names out there? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back. Thank you, Susan. So now the next step is,
That you'll call on each council member and they'll have an opportunity to make comments about the candidates. And once everyone has had the opportunity to make any comments they want, we'll head into, you find out how many people want to make a motion, and then we'll start this process.
the process with the
chips.
chips, okay. Okay, so let's comments. Linda, do you have any comments? We'll start with you this time.
Let's see, well, I think that each person that came had put a lot of thought into it, and I think that's very important. And you can see that, some have a little bit more background and experience, and I did like Clarence Hartley's suggestions of coming up with actually some possibility of something to add to, income. Some thoughts like that. I think it's always good to kind of go along with that. I think all of them, though, are very qualified.
Okay. Amanda?
I have to echo what Linda said about all the candidates. I think they all have something to bring to the table. They've all individually contributed to the community in one way or another. And, yeah, just...
Veronica?
I just want to say thank you. This is a job that does take quite a bit of time. You see this part of it, there's a lot more. There's a lot of reading and research, and so this is something that you have to be committed to. And believe me, I'm learning still since January. But again, I think each and every one of you has something to bring to the table, along with Tony Tyrell, because he does have a lot of experience, and I do recognize that also. And I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for stepping up. That's what makes this community and the City of Angels Camp as good as it is. So.
As I stated to each of you, we're going through tough times, and we're going to have to make some hard decisions going forward very, very shortly. And so I appreciate the business acumen that both Joe and Clarence bring to the table. And Trina, I was impressed with your personal story. So I want to thank you all, and we have a tough decision to make. And I hope the two of you that don't, or three of you technically, I guess, that don't make it, please don't give up. Come back. So with that, Susan, I'll guide us through this CHIP process.
Okay. First, you have to determine how many council members. I'm sorry. First, the mayor will determine how many council members, including yourself, would like to make a motion on a candidate.
Okay.
I
Linda?
think, I
Do you want
mean,
me to start?
yeah, I mean, I'll read the draw.
So why don't you draw the-
If we all want to make a motion, we have to draw.
No,
Okay.
don't make the motion. You know.
No, we're only determining if you want to make a motion right now.
Yes.
Do you want to or do you not?
Oh.
It's kind of like when we did yours, we had to pick and say if we're going to make a motion or not to nominate.
This is tough. Obviously, we don't have
I
a lot of
know,
clear choices.
We have to decide.
Veronica, this is a process that was brought up by a previous council when we had some problems with who would make motions and everybody would motion at the same time. So that council put together the CHIP process, which is if Susan can come up, and if you want to make a motion, just grab a chip. Whoever gets the lowest chip will make the first motion. This is something that does need to be changed in the future, but we keep trying, and it seems to work right
It's our
now. But
council handbook.
so she can just,
Let them know what happens if someone does make a motion, the number one person makes a motion.
right, I mean, if you make a motion and there's no second, it goes to the second person who has the lowest number after the first. It's just sort of just to try and get it going. So all you have to do is pick a chip, and it just sort of follows down the line. The first one, if no one follows through, it goes to the second chip. If no one follows through, it goes to the third, but it could stop right at the first, if everybody agrees to the motion that's made.
Okay.
There, someone's
I
going to,
would like to make a motion then, so I'd like a
And
chip.
who else would?
well, just take them, then,
And I do.
and they can,
Linda does.
I'll take one.
Linda does.
this is a little cumbersome, but we're still trying to get a good way to do it.
Oh, you took two. So now you have to start over. Give me those.
I didn't look at them.
No cheating on me. Okay, somebody has number one.
Thank you.
Can't do that. Okay,
Okay.
So
you have the first motion, and
That'll solve our problem right there.
and the mayor will ask, who's got the first chip?
Veronica, do you have the first trip?
Yes,
And you make a
Mr.
motion.
Mayor, I do.
Now you make a motion of who'd like, and the mayor will ask for a second.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to have Joseph Oliveira on the city council.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of Joe Oliveira being appointed to the city council, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, pass with
Opposed?
three.
Okay,
And that's it.
that's it?
It's the three.
That's it?
Majority.
If you vote for it. You voted for it, yeah.
So we don't go,
Okay.
I've never done this before. I've only been over there.
I can't.
Joe, congratulations. Clarence, Trina, thank you very much. Appreciate you stepping up.
I give it.
We are going to address that procedure
Yeah.
I promise you, we will.
way too often.
It'll be soon, too.
Yeah,
This is horrible.
I think so.
Okay, so now-
It's too much confusion.
It's going to be a whole,
Yeah, very confusing.
Okay,
I think, yes,
I'm sorry, I'm still a little bit in shock here, okay. Regular agenda, oath of office. Susan Wenger, Deputy City Clerk, will swear in Mr. Oliveira.
Joseph Olivero,
do solemnly swear that I will support and defend
will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the State of California,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
and that I will well and faithfully
I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Scott, do you want a break, a short break or anything? If people want to leave or...
We'll dive in.
No big deal.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going yet. All right. Okay, we will move on to our regular agenda. Item number 1 is the contract for website services. Susan, you want to take this one?
Yes, I will.
You?
We're on agenda item 1 right now. That's this. And this goes on back to agenda item 2. Okay, to the council. Staff is recommending that the city terminate its contract between the City of Angels and Working Arts Marketing Incorporated, dated January 3rd, 2017, and contract with a local company to transfer our website, angelscamp.gov, to a new host server that's managed by the city. And the reason we want to do that is that we've run into some issues with the current contract that doesn't allow us to make any changes to our site ourselves. So our maintenance fee is being eaten up, having them take the information that I've put on the website, or that staff has put on the website, and pushing it live to a production site, where we only have access to staging, and there are things that I've been doing for months that we could do ourselves, but we pay them to look at it and make it live. And we think that we can save the city money by hosting it ourselves and managing the website, the areas that we are capable of managing internally, and then contracting with a local company for training and bigger items that we're not capable of doing ourselves.
Okay.
Currently, yeah, I can mention that. Currently, we've been speaking with Scott from the Get Smart Group and Chris Jack from Computer Fireman about the hosting and training and things.
Okay, we don't have a contract with either of those entities.
Not at this time.
Okay.
And they would be on an as-needed basis, correct? Once you or anyone else you are working with to get trained, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And in that contract that we are currently under, I had read through it, and I'm not a big contract person, but it was saying that they have a 30-day notice, and that's fine, so everything will be fine, we won't have an argument
Yes.
against
We can
this
terminate
from
the
them.
contract and in 3 days, but we must then pay for the following month,
Okay,
which is $200.
okay. Do we have an estimated savings?
Yeah. Oh. Second page, yeah, fiscal impact. Okay, so our initial cost to do this, we estimate to be $800.
Right.
That would be the $500 approximately to move the site. It may be less than that. And then $300 for training on how, on hosting it and doing a few things. And then we expect to need a little more assistance through the rest of the year. So it looks like under our current contract, we pay a minimum of $2,400 because at $200 a month. And the city could experience a savings of probably $600 in the first year, even including that $800 startup cost. So in future years, we would probably recognize even more savings.
Now, with the training, will it be a one cost for a group of staff, or is it individual staff that for the training?
haven't-
And I just want to make sure that we utilize the maximum amount with that training to make sure that we have cross, if that means each department making sure they oversee those part of the website, that they all get that same training for the cost of.
Well, every department wouldn't have access to make the changes. They wouldn't have administrative rights to go in and make
Okay.
any changes. They could be trained on how to check their website to make sure that it has what they expect to have on it.
Okay.
But again, we don't have a contract yet, so we haven't ironed out the fine details.
I just trying to make sure we look at all the angles, that we're just not depending on one individuals, and we have enough cross-train that
Amanda,
things get done.
in the past with our previous website, we had an administrator, and then we have certain people that couldn't touch stuff they might break, but like the museum put
And
on
I
their
guess
own
that's what
agendas,
I-
and so did Planning Commission, and so I'm assuming that's what, and the main person will probably be Susan as an administrator, and she will also train the others to do exactly that, put on their own agendas and do that, so yeah, it would be more than one. Right
Okay,
now, it's
that's
sort
what
of
I just-
Susan and
that's what I'm
Kim,
hanging on.
right.
Okay, perfect.
Can you tell me, does the city already own this server that's going to be migrated to?
We do own a server. I'm still trying to find out whether that server would support this website. I think it
So
will.
that's an unknown at this point.
So that is an unknown, but we could always go to an outside hosting company like HostGator or something like that, and they charge $15 a month.
And is there, on the city's website, other than informational data, is there any exposure or risk for the city in the case of a failure, financial or otherwise? Is there critical personnel data on that server? Is there
No. Oh.
financial data on that server?
If you're talking about the city's own server, yes, we have business data on there, but it doesn't have to be hosted on that computer.
But we have the capability to respond to some kind of a crisis and get the data up. And it would be backed up someplace, and we're not worried about
Are you
loss of
talking
data.
about our business data or our website?
Well, I'm just referring to the opening statement about moving it to a new host server.
Okay.
I didn't know where that was. That's why I'm asking.
And we haven't made that determination yet, because like I said, it could be a server that we currently have that has other information on it, or we could be hosting it through a commercial website hosting entity.
Thanks.
Does anybody any public have any comment on this item? Nope, I see someone coming to the podium.
It sounds like a lot more
Okay.
research needs to be done. Sorry.
Sorry.
40 years in the IT business, you never want to host your own server. If somehow this server that you have, that you may use, is on the same network, there are people trying to get into your systems every day. Every day. You put it somewhere else. $200 a month is not a bad deal. You need to get with somebody that allows you to go in, do your changes on your pages, FTP that system over to that new site, and you're done. You can go in and modify your web pages don't put it on the city's back. I mean, if there's any way that there's any sensitive data in the system that server, if it's totally alone and is not connected to any other computer in your system, it won't be hacked. I don't know what your system is set up as, but that's reality in the world out here. Security is your highest priority.
I do understand that, and it wasn't my first intention to host on the city server. I'm saying we have a server that we could host on, but probably the first choice would be to host with an outside, a commercial hosting service.
Traffic. I mean, you have one input to your server, how many people are you going to be able to serve at one time on that server? How many people are on your website at any one time? All of that has to do with the life of that system and being able to crash it. I mean, Facebook crashes, and how many millions of people do they have on there? But they have rows and rows and rows and banks and banks and banks of servers, and that's all in the cloud. Those are data centers. Have that website where you can access it remotely. Have it in South Dakota, on a server farm. Don't have it in your office, please.
No, that would not be our intention.
And I think that's not the purpose of this contract. I think the purpose of the contract, while we're revisiting it, is because the contractors are not doing the job that they were contracted to do. So I think we already know that we need to host it off of our personnel server. It's just getting to make sure that what we need done and in a timely manner. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, so we'll bring it back to the dais. Okay, so any comments or questions from us?
Just that I'm gonna echo what I just said, that I think Mary and I have been having this conversation for a couple months now of the issues with this contractor. And I think that we need to get it out of this contract and work with someone else to get what we need done. Because this is just not working.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
You make me read the agenda.
Move to
All right.
terminate the contract.
Between
Terminate.
City of Angels and
Between
Working
City of
Arts.
Angels and Working-
Okay, so we're moving to terminate contract between the City of Angels Working Arts Marketing. Okay. It's been moved. Second?
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Follendor, second by Councilperson Matilde. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay. All right, the final item on the agenda is the report on Proposition 64/marijuana legalization. And I guess it's for discussion only, is to help us understand how this affects our city and the different options that we have going forward. Derek?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I feel like our staff report outlines the various issues. So rather than just simply repeat that, I thought it's pretty self-explanatory, and there's a lot of issues to discuss. And so my preference would be to let you all just start firing away questions at me and staff. And then once you've done that, then the public can weigh in. Just as a general approach, I tried to address all of the issues that you raised. I did contact the Calaveras Cannabis Alliance. It does appear that they're here. So I left a message for them late last week, probably later than I should, so I apologize for not letting them know sooner, but I appreciate that they're here. So I tried to provide you information from, I guess, so to speak, both sides of the issue. The one issue that I really can't help you with at this point, and I don't know that anyone can help you with, is understanding what the grant money really means. I note that the league was, there's a trailer bill where they were merging the 2015 statute that the legislature had enacted with Proposition 64. And initially, the league and the police chiefs were very concerned about that, but the league and police chiefs were able to integrate many of their comments, and so now that they call that the trailer bill, that bill is now moving forward. The one of the few issues that the league could not get its position adopted on is clarifications about the grant program. And what does that really mean? I was at the city attorney conference last month, and the league's Tim Cromartie, whose article I provided, who's the lead legislative analyst or lobbyist for the league, basically told the city attorneys at that point he didn't know, there's too many issues about what that grant money means. I think these will get worked out. I think that at some point it's a very fluid process, but I can't tell you right now what the financial consequences. If you opt in, so to speak, if you have a permissive scheme whereby you allow commercial uses, retail uses, or cultivation uses above and beyond the 6 plants that have to be allowed indoors, I don't know what that really means at this point in terms of what you can really expect. I think that's just too fluid of a situation at this point. Again, I think there will be answers. I think that will be worked out, but we're just not at a point where we have clarity on that. So I've tried to outline your staff's position. Generally speaking, and I don't want to mince words or maybe say things that aren't accurate, but I think your code enforcement department is concerned about a lack of resources. If you have a permissive scheme, about their ability to regulate. Steve's comments are there. Police chief has outlined some of his concerns, and he can certainly elaborate on those. He's provided information that I apologize I didn't include that in with my staff report, but that is up here, a report that was done based on the Colorado experience. And then Julie has provided some very important comments as well on just the financial aspect. And obviously, she saw issues that we didn't see, including a GAN limit issue, and whether there could be a GAN limit issue. It doesn't appear that there will be, but it's certainly an issue that has to be considered. And then also, Julie is the one who deals with the state currently in other areas where we're getting grant money, and has some war stories that probably shape her experiences with that general subject. So with that, I would, rather than just regurgitate and repeat my staff report, I can answer questions, and then staff can answer questions, and then once you've gotten those questions answers, my recommendation is that we open it up to public for their input.
Okay. Questions?
Well, I have a question. I had a question about the dual licensing problem. Has that been resolved where if we were licensed locally, that the state doesn't know? They have to, it's supposed to be, according to the law, that the local license has to be awarded in order to get a state license, but the state won't know whether or not the local license has that been resolved yet?
I don't think that has fully been resolved, but as far as I know, that's still an issue.
Okay.
As far as,
like, they wouldn't even know.
Yeah, and I think
somebody could say, "Oh, I have a license with this."
The way, if we were to adopt a permissive scheme, I think that I would want to build into any ordinance a notification procedure whereby, upon the issuance of a permit, we immediately contact the state regulatory agency and furnish them a permit, so that we would take care of that on our own, so that if that's something we can address if we adopt a permissive scheme.
Mhm.
I would take the initiative on that. I suspect they'll fix that, though.
They might, yeah.
Yeah.
They permit for what? You're not explaining what you permit.
You have to take the podium.
Ted.
Well, I'm going to take the phone, but you're going to have a conversation among yourself, that's fine. You want to include us and explain what you're talking about.
Well, Ted, we'll have a little discussion here first, then we'll open it up to the public, and then...
We can explain it, though.
Well, I think that that's fine. The point is that under Proposition 64, the state or the city has the authority to ban all outdoor cultivation. The city has the authority to ban all retail transactions within city limits, and the city has the authority to ban any deliveries door to door within the city. The only thing the city cannot ban is 6 plants indoors. Under Proposition 64, that is the minimum that a person in their own home for their own personal use may grow. That is the minimum. But at the same time, Proposition 64 also allows cities to adopt all kinds of permissive schemes whereby they allow greater cultivation indoors, they allow cultivation outdoors, they allow for retail transactions in storefronts within the city, and they provide mechanisms whereby they can tax that, whereby cities can regulate that within city limits through zoning. And a lot of what some cities who are adopting what I call permissive schemes, in other words, instead of just banning everything they can, they're actually trying to come up with a regulatory way, a way to allow certain marijuana uses is through permits. Conditional use permits are the traditional way city and counties zone properties and get control over them. They require someone to submit an application, and then that person is required to abide by all kinds of conditions that are designed to make their property use consistent with other properties. And so when I reference permit, I'm referencing a generic permit that we might, obviously we don't have any ordinances in place, but we would have the ability, just as we have the ability to regulate certain zoning uses with conditional use permits, we would do that with marijuana uses.
I think the thing I was bringing up is if you have to have a local permit or license in order for the state to give a license to the marijuana grower or retail sales, whatever, but there is no communication from the state to the local city for them to know whether or not the person can say, I'm licensed, and the state doesn't know it. They have no way of knowing for sure.
Right.
That so there's no communication there, so somebody could just go tell the state they are and they aren't. You see what I'm saying? So that's something that has to be corrected.
Yes.
In the law, and they are looking to correct that,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, I just wondered if that had been accomplished yet.
That, I'm not aware that has been accomplished. But I will say that I don't know every detail of that trailer bill, so it may be that there's language in there now that addresses that.
Yeah. I had just one other question at this point was, now, it is a violation of federal law still for us to have anything, that we do anything. Is that true, and how does that work?
It is, it remains illegal to have any quantity of marijuana on your possession or to grow it under federal law or to transfer it in for any purpose, retail or otherwise. But states have moved forward anyway with legalization. Under the Obama administration, the signal was that as long as you have a regulatory scheme and you're enforcing that scheme, we will leave you alone. It's unclear whether the Trump administration will do the same, and in the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, in a number of speeches, has indicated that that's unlikely to be his position. We don't know what that means, though. Will the feds start cracking down on states like Colorado, now like California, that have permissive schemes? I guess we're in a wait-and-see mode. And then the second question is, if they do that, are they going to focus their effort on the states, or will they come after cities that are regulating under a state statute? Right. So I suspect that the mood of the current administration is that they don't like this and that they don't look favorably upon it, but, you know, we don't know in 3.5 years that they will, or a little over that they will be the administration in power. So, you know, obviously we have elections, so my personal view is that they may not, but over time I think that the federal government is going to relax that. and not enforce that.
Well, what could they do to the city? What kind of thing would happen if, let's say, the city does participate, and then the federal government, because I know Jeff Sessions says he hates laws that are on the books that aren't enforced because he's against lawlessness. So so let's say they came, and beyond the state, even into the cities, what would be the possible repercussions?
Well, they would take Mary and put her in a jail cell, and we would never see her again.
I mean, is there fines, or, what kind of stuff would happen?
In theory, I mean, it's somewhat nebulous. The only real examples we have, I believe it was Oakland and maybe Berkeley and some other places in the Bay Area where, 5, 6, 7 years ago, they were sort of at the pioneering edge of the dispensary movement, where they were openly courting dispensaries and openly taxing them. Oaksterdam was one of the famous ones, and some others. And I believe they received notices from the U.S. Attorney General in their district saying that you're committing a crime and you're effectively aiding and abetting. Those are my words. But you're aiding and abetting a violation of federal law. And, I don't know if they actually threatened to jail public officials or what they actually threatened. I think I could probably go back and Google the letters and find them. But their position was that if you are a city and you're taxing and specifically encouraging marijuana in violation of federal law, then you're possibly you could be prosecuted. But beyond a threat of sort of a nebulous violation under this aiding and abetting theory, I don't know that anyone has ever actually been prosecuted, nor would, if someone were, if the federal government would be successful. So in theory, they could say, Angels Camp, if you regulate this, and especially if you're taxing it and making money off it, you're essentially aiding and abetting violations of federal law. I just think that's so remote. That possibility is just not really there.
What do you think, I was wondering about like a chief of police. If we're saying not to enforce certain laws because of the federal law, saying you have to violate the federal law, would there be a matter of conscience, or are we pushing on the conscience of those who are in our departments to make them do something that is violating a federal law, and maybe the police would want to enforce that federal law?
I have a follow-up question on that. With the CSA and the 10th Amendment, my understanding is as long as the federal government cannot force us to abide by federal law, if the state already has its law under the 10th Amendment, and and also the CSA has left a loophole that states can, for the health and safety of the people, craft their own laws locally to combat certain issues, and such issues would be cannabis. So where in those loopholes and that 10th Amendment, wouldn't that be somewhat of a justification as a state or in the local government?
So thus far, what the Supreme Court has explained is a case called Raich, R-A-I-C-H versus Gonzalez, Alberto Gonzalez, the former Attorney General in the Bush administration. And basically, what the court said in that decision, actually a Justice Scalia decision, was that the Controlled Substances Act, the federal law that regulates marijuana, among many other drugs, is an exercise of Congress's commerce power. And the commerce power is part of Article 1 of the Constitution, which describes Congress's powers. And the Supreme Court has said that the Congress power is very broad. The reason why Proposition 215, medical marijuana, was not held to be a violation of the Controlled Substances Act is because it was structured in a special way. It was structured as an immunity. The Proposition 215 didn't actually legalize marijuana. What it said is if you have a medical need and you only possess a reasonable amount of marijuana, you won't be prosecuted. And so what Justice Scalia said in the Race decision is that's really the state deciding who they're going to prosecute or not prosecute within their own criminal system. And that we see is not a conflict between their law and the Controlled Substances Act. So essentially the states were not encroaching on commerce, the congressional commerce power, because they were simply, the states have a right to decide who to prosecute and who to not prosecute. That's a very different situation where you're actually expressly authorizing people to do things that federal law prohibits, which is what our new statutory regime does. It says you can possess marijuana, you can grow it, states you can tax it, cities you can tax it, and so that issue is different than what has been presented, and I'm aware of those arguments. You know, trying to predict what the Supreme Court will do
So then,
is difficult. So I could say that those arguments are there.
okay.
I
And
can't
so then
predict.
following up on that, I mean, we can sit here all day long and argue constitutional law, but we have now a mandate to do certain things under Prop 64. So we really should be addressing the Prop 64 issue and not sit here all night long arguing the federal. And I understand, and it is some of my concerns when, if there is a violation, where does the police stand? And it's not just RPD, it is across the state. However, they now have a state obligation that we need to consider and figure out what we're gonna do. So I would like to start finding out within this city, what are the pros and the cons of what we should be looking at with Prop 64. Given our budget right now, should we start turning the focus and the conversation to how we're going to generate revenue? Or should we start focusing our discussion on what type of permitting, or, you know, to get into regulation before January 1st? So based on that, I would like to know from Julie's comments and some of Steve and Todd, you know, if we were to go a route of finding revenue, what are our pros and cons to support that? To support staff to be able to do some of those things. And if we're not, then what is our permitting process look like to start abiding by that law?
Well, my point was that if we're generating revenue by violating federal law, there's a conflict there, and if we're bringing our police to have to not enforce federal law.
And we can sit here all night long and
So-
talk about hypotheticals.
Well,
I mean, if we
yeah.
continue the hypothetical clause, we'll never get anywhere.
Okay.
I mean, we can be in violation all day long. I mean, are we gonna start looking at every store in town? Calaveras Lumber, are they in violation of the federal law for, I mean, I get what you're saying, we're putting ourselves in a position, but we're basing it off of fear and hypotheticals that we cannot be, no one can give us a concrete answer.
Yeah.
So if we
Well,
spend
the
all
federal government
day.
says we're violating, but, you know, the whole point is whether you put our departments in a conscience, a problem of conscience, like if you're a police officer, you know, you're wanting to enforce certain laws and now you're being denied. I mean, those things are very important for us. I mean, 54% of Angel Camp voters voted against Proposition 64. So we're kind of saying the majority don't want it. But
They
we're
were
kinda- as
against the
council, we're
regulation,
saying-
not a
we're s-
ban.
No, we're saying the 54 said against Proposition 64.
Which is a
54%.
regulation. So it was a regulation for the state of California to regulate marijuana. It wasn't
It's
because
a-
they were against it, they were against the regulation. I mean, but here, this is what I'm saying. It depends on what side, how are you gonna argue that? Yeah, it could be a ban, but it's a
I figure
regulation.
I represent the majority, so, okay, there you go.
Well,
So I would like to go back to my original question and find out, based on Julie's comments in her staff report, as well as the concerns that Todd and Steve have brought up, what are we looking at if we were to start looking into some kind of revenue aspect? If we were to generate revenue from any of this, is that going to be enough to support these staff to deal with this? And if not, then what type of permitting process should we be looking at to at least satisfy the Prop 64 requirement that the cities and counties have to do? I would like to know.
So just so we can answer your question, are you?
So the GAN limit, what is the holdup with the GAN limit, with the revenue source?
Sounds like there probably isn't one.
Yeah,
And so
I
if
would,
there is a concern with the GAN limit, then what do we need to start exploring going forward to get some of those concerns?
I would say we outlined the GAN limit as a possible concern, just so the council has a full picture. I would say at this point, unless Julie feels otherwise, it probably isn't a concern. You know, I can't speak for Julie, but I mean, I can speak pragmatically, is until we really understand what kind of money we're going to get from the state and how much it really will be, is it going to be a trickle, is it going to be a lot? You know, I don't know that we'll be able to give you the answer to that question. And then, of course, you know, as Julie's outlined, we've had problems, I think, with AB 109, just getting the state to pay up when they're supposed to pay up.
Yeah.
And that becomes a problem. So, unfortunately, I mean, I understand, Councilmember Follendorf, where you're coming from. I had hoped we would be able to, and I know when you brought this up and we spoke, you wanted, you know, this was something you wanted, but I just think at June of 2017, I don't think we have enough information to really help this council understand what the financial benefits would be of opting in, if that were your approach. Hopefully, within a few months, we'll have those answers, but we don't have them today.
In your experience, is there enough out there with the experiences in, say, Colorado, towns of similar sizes, that you could extract some data and just say, what if? This is what happened to them.
Can you speak into your mic? We have this.
Just to get an idea, I mean, it would be, there's an element of risk in taking the money.
Right.
And so how much money is it? Is there a way we can get some data to kind of help us through that?
And I would also be curious, what has been our sales tax revenue since the Butte Fire, and from the Butte Fire to now within the city, to see what has come in off of the surrounding area. Could that give us a number at all to see where we're at? Julie, I don't know what she wants.
Yeah.
But is that something that we could see locally?
I'm at a loss here. I didn't even know my name was in your staff report. So I'm trying to catch up a little bit. I'm still in the theoretical for all practical purposes. What I can tell you is our current budget issue does not include any impacts from cannabis in anything you're talking about.
Not even sales tax?
Right now, no. Our shortfall has nothing to do with either the cost impacts of cannabis or the revenue impacts of cannabis. There is nothing in it right now. I can pretty much tell you by experience, my experience, that if you now get new impacts for cannabis, that the revenue that you're going to generate more than likely is not going to fix our current situation, because it more than likely will just barely, if it does, take care of the impacts, the additional impacts you're going to get. I know that state revenue, when they give it to you, is usually handed out very
Grudgingly.
They give me a word. You get a lot of it to begin with, and then little by little, they take it back to where it's almost nothing. So I think from the state handouts that are coming out, I think we would have to look at it as eventually they're going to go away. That doesn't mean that we can't take care of ourselves in other ways. We can do certain permit fees, or like our city attorney was saying, those usually, though, have to be capped at the amount of impact. So again, that's not going to help us with our current situation, because our current situation doesn't show those impacts. So if it's a fee-based, it's not, it's a problem. If we do a general property tax, excise tax.
Special tax.
Yeah, right, you start getting into areas that I am just not well-versed enough to talk about, you know. But again, I think those would probably be based on the impacts that you would get from cannabis. Am I correct in assuming that?
We can try a special tax under Propositions 13 and 218 on transactions. The two caveats are, there are some who think that because the state is going to be taxing marijuana so significantly that when you add local taxes, you might sort of price out the market. In other words, why would I go there when I could maybe still get it somewhere else? And then secondly, a special tax needs 2/3 approval by the voting public. And so you have to account for the fact that the voters might say no.
Well, they voted on Measure C, and they obviously wanted the money.
Yeah, in other words, I mean, that, as a practical matter, I mean, if 54% of voters at this last election were opposed to Proposition 64, what does that mean? Now, when they're faced with the different question of should we tax it because we're going to have it, maybe they'd say yes. Well, if we're going to have it, then yes, we should tax it and make money off of it. Maybe you get that 66% plus one threshold. I don't know, but you could spend a lot of time coming up with a taxation, a local tax system, and a regulatory system, only to have the voters say no to the tax, and it has happened elsewhere.
So, my other question for you with, not necessarily revenue, but say this, we go, just the indoor permit route, how did that help police and code enforcement get funded? Is that enough to fund them to regulate what's going on in here?
If we put together
I
a
mean-
fee, it would be based exactly on those impacts to cover them.
Okay.
So if it's fee-based, we would be pretty much covering it. I might also mention sales tax. I mean, if you're going to allow the sales and it goes through the sales tax, that probably will affect the GAN limit, but that also may also help us with our current situation. So the sales tax piece is the one that we don't know about because it wouldn't necessarily be associated directly with the impact and could help us in another area.
You mean a general sales tax, not just one on cannabis, is what you're
Correct.
saying? Just raising
Correct.
the sales tax on retail sales, whether there's cannabis or not?
Just taxing it where we're not taxing it now. You have a new business in your place, you've got new sales, you've got new tax.
Right.
Without even touching the base rate.
Yeah, yeah.
So it all depends on what type of income you're talking about and what our impact is. So it's very difficult. I agree with the city attorney. It's all theoretical at this stage of the game, and it's almost like we need to know what options you may be looking at to start, parsing it out, if you asked me for my recommendation, which you didn't.
I've got a question.
For me?
Maybe you can answer it if you know the answer. No, it's actually, our directors and officers insurance, or your malpractice insurance, whatever insurance covers you, if the federal government did come down and get involved, would we be covered individually? Or would we have our neck stuck out there because we encouraged an illegal enterprise federally?
And I think we talked to, because other cities are doing the same thing, and they're making it in the ordinances where they don't have any liability. So how would that work?
You can put it in an ordinance, but the insurance company's the one, someone's gonna have to ante up and pay that bill, pay that defense. Who would we be indemnified, or are we putting our personal, I mean, my $277.05 a month doesn't allow me to become a criminal. I'm just not gonna risk it.
So there's two issues there. One is when a public official is accused of a crime, there is a procedure whereby the city council has to agree, following their request, to pay for the criminal proceedings. So just as a matter of California law, if a public official is prosecuted in some forum for an act relating to conduct while they're in office or as part of their employment, they don't automatically get coverage under California law. There has to be a determination by the city council. And then now that's a payment, then that becomes a payment by the city. So that's one issue. that's an issue, that's a valid issue I can look at I would need to see our memorandum of coverage on our officers and
Yeah, we've got errors and omissions.
errors and omissions policy. But generally speaking, I doubt it would cover any criminal behavior. In other words, any alleged criminal behavior. Those typically govern what are essential accidental civil claims, slip and falls, or, somebody sues you for, because you said something they didn't like in a public meeting and they sue you for defamation, that kind of stuff. But I doubt we would have any coverage for any crime, whether it's marijuana involved or anything else.
So could that,
I mean, it seems to me it'd be pretty easy for, if the federal government wanted to crack down, just send out a blanket note to anyone who doesn't ban it and say, okay, y'all are, in violation of the law, and we're gonna come after you personally. Watch a bunch of mayors and council people head for the hills.
It's
banned,
theoretical. I can't tell you that won't happen. I mean, there's a lot of people that would say that's not likely to happen, but as an attorney, I get to hypothesize about all kinds of stuff, and so it's a possibility.
so off of Scott's comment, more of a liability from the city as a whole, I know the city of Riverbank is considering manufacturing down at the cannery, and they are drafting an agreement with the business to, if anything does happen, that the city's not liable and they will pay all fees associated with any of that, and is that something that we could look into to have as a buffer for ourselves?
Yeah.
And they're still working on the negotiation with that, but from my meeting with their mayor last week, they were in discussions on how they could use that to their advantage.
Did
and
they say
put
who
it back
they-
on the businesses.
And then negotiating with who? Riverside is negotiating?
A business that's moving into their cannery to do manufacturing.
The answer, Councilmember Fallendorfer, is yes, and not only with a marijuana business, but any business, it's good practice that when an applicant goes through the application process, they have to indemnify the city for any lawsuits. CEQA lawsuits always come after a controversial project, so the applicant is always on the hook to cover the city's expenses and their own expenses and take all the risks associated with the project. So if we were to consider a permissive scheme where we enter into, granted conditional use permits or enter into development agreements with cannabis businesses, it would be my preference as city attorney that those enterprises or businesses indemnify the city to the maximum possible extent for those kind of things. That would
That
be,
was their concern as well, and
Yeah.
that's how they were
Yeah.
dealing with the situation.
I would absolutely
At that.
recommend that.
Okay.
If you went that direction, I think I could draft language in any ordinance that would cover that situation.
I'm just thinking
Okay,
over.
let's go ahead and open this up to the public. Anybody want to make any comments? You're an IT guy.
I'd like to go first. Anyway, okay, Controlled Substance Act, federal law. Controlled substance, marijuana, has no medical value. Do you believe that? Then it's against federal law. If not, under the CSA, it says regulate. State of California has come in, the voters have approved it, even though we didn't in Angels Camp or Calaveras County. But the state said, yes, we're going to make it legal for adults. We already have it legal for medical, and we're going to allow people to use it. We're going to allow cities to tax it. The state's the one that's created this law and created your morass. You have an opportunity to legalize it, support it, take it off its prohibition, and allow it to be grown and used, taxed, and regulated. If you go the opposite way, we've done that for the last 80 years. Has it stopped it? Has it done anything but make more of a mess? Have any of you seen the war on drugs on the History Channel? They point to the federal government as the reason for the drug problem right now. LSD was introduced by the CIA, given to people in the Army, other places. Mr. Nixon decided to make a Controlled Substance Act after he made deals with guys down in Florida to import heroin. We imported heroin during the Vietnam War where I served. It came into Travis Air Force Base where I served. It was done by our government. Now, we have a chance to take some of that back. Marijuana is not the evil thing that it's been made out to be. It's been demonized, surely. Every one of you were a kid sometime. You took chances, dares, you got behind the wheel of a car and you had 3 or 4 beers. Maybe you never did. A lot of us did. A lot of us did a lot of other things. But in the end, we all grew up. We go down to a music festival, we have wine. Some of us smoke a joint. We don't necessarily get in our cars and drive drunk. But if they're already doing that, they're going to do it whether you regulate it or you ban it. You're going to either put people in jail for something or you're going to make money off of that. However you want to go about it. You know, that's your job. Unfortunately, I don't want that job.
I just want to let you know that you have a 3-minute maximum. You've got about 30 seconds. Go.
Okay. Anyway, to sum up, we have an opportunity, not just here in Calaveras, but to kind of balance the books. There's a way to make money off of this, and it's not a moral issue. It's a financial issue. The government's the one that made it illegal. It wasn't legal for 10,000 years before that. The government made it illegal to make alcohol legal. Thank you.
Yeah, just so the public knows, we do have a 3-minute maximum for public comment, and we will be reminding you of that since there's so many speakers. Night.
Good night.
See you, Clarence.
Is there anybody else that has a comment? Okay. Oh.
Hi, Angels Camp City Council. Trevor Whitkey. I'm with the Calaveras Cannabis Alliance, the executive director now. With regard to the federal enforcement issues, a couple of things just to add on to what's already been said. The Ninth Circuit Court in the United States versus McIntosh upheld the Rohrabaugh-Farr Amendment. The Rohrabaugh-Farr Amendment essentially limits the use of funds from the federal government for enforcement of marijuana laws. So long as there are regulations, the federal government cannot enforce federal laws in the states that have regulations. So in Colorado, Washington, California, Alaska, Oregon, and all of the multitude of other states that have medical marijuana as well as recreational, the federal government cannot go in there. And when they did, in the United States versus McIntosh, when they took 10 cases, bundled them together, and determined this specific issue, they determined that the federal government cannot spend any money on enforcement or prosecution. That means they can't pay the wages to the DEA agents who go out there and cut down the plants. They can't pay the wages to the prosecutors who prosecute the cases criminally. Additionally, no court has ever found that...
Trevor, could I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it going to take into my time?
No. I just wanted to know, I had read that it's funded on a yearly basis.
The Rohrabaugh-Farr?
Yeah.
It's not funded, it's a funding
funding, yeah. I mean,
restriction.
every year they review it
Yes,
and make a
and it's-
decision. So
and it's been
it could come
reviewed.
up for review this year, and, okay.
Yeah, so it came up for review in April, and it was renewed again in April. Even though there had been rumblings that it wasn't going to get renewed, it did get renewed. And Paul Ryan specifically had said that they weren't going to allow these types of riders onto funding bills, but they did allow these riders onto the funding bills again this last year. So it's still in effect, and so long as it's in effect, there isn't going to be any ability for the federal government to spend any money in this area of enforcement. Additionally, no court has ever found that the Controlled Substance Act preempts local law in the areas impacted by marijuana, specifically zoning, public safety, these sorts of areas. So those areas have always been the area of law that is the jurisdiction of local municipalities. They get to make their own laws. Now, the federal government has the Controlled Substance Act and the penalties associated with the use, possession of a Schedule I drug such as marijuana. Those penalties are far more stringent and far more strict than the penalties that we've had in California for decades. The federal government didn't come in and say, oh, stop, our rule preempts your rule. And that's because this Controlled Substance Act has a specific provision in it which says that local jurisdictions rule in the field traditionally. So they weren't preempting the rule of local jurisdictions in this area. To do so, they would have had to have had a clause that explicitly said so. It's not in the CSA. A very good paper on this is Cooperative Federalism and Marijuana Regulations. It was written by Erwin Cherminsky. He's a preeminent constitutional legal scholar. He actually provides constitutional analysis to the Supreme Court in their decisions. In addition to these issues, issues regarding funding have been brought up. I know revenue is obviously an issue. We're dealing with this at the county level. The questions about the cost of enforcement and implementing a program are being addressed at the county. It is clear that any fee structure that you create for permitting is going to cover the impacts. That is specifically what that fee is for. All impacts associated with the activity should be covered by the cost of the fee payer themselves. So this means that if somebody's growing or opens up a business here and you have to do inspections, those inspections have to be paid for by these individuals. All direct costs that can be associated with the activity should be covered by the individuals. Now, like with alcohol, there are indirect costs that are associated with the activity. People who consume alcohol do go out and drive drunk occasionally.
Trevor, excuse me, you've gone actually over 4 minutes.
Oh,
so
I'm sorry.
That's
No.
okay.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Oh, no, it's fine.
Anybody else?
No.
Anybody else other than
Trevor will keep talking.
Okay, we'll bring it back here then. This was a discussion item only. I'm curious about the lack of the Fed's ability to come in and enforce the law. I think that's an interesting thing that we need to learn more about. I also kind of like the thought that, where's the IT gentleman? He's still here, he'll take off. He stepped out. But, it kind of got me thinking that clearly it isn't working now. It hasn't been working now. And so if the feds do come after us, we decide to put in a distribution center or something like that, we can make the argument maybe that, hey, we're trying to make it work. So that's something that kind of dawned on me. And the other thing that's just still real big in front of me is it's illegal. So I'm definitely looking for solutions, and I'm not passing any moral judgment on it. I just don't want to risk, I don't want to take any personal risk for it because I don't have a dog in this fight. And so that's number one. And then, after that, I just want to make sure that if we do something, it's sustainable and not just covering our impacts, but going beyond that. Any other closing comments?
I have another comment, but somebody else first.
I'd like to, of all this information and discussion, I appreciate everybody's input and expertise and opinions. My questions are, if we do the personal growth within the city, the permit fees, I look at human nature and I wonder, is somebody actually going to go get a permit fee? And right now, I think there's people that are accepting of cannabis, and then there's the stigma of, you're a pothead. So the permit fees, I would love to see, because I don't think they impact our GAN limit. But I do wonder would it even be effective? I would hope so, but whatever. Taxation on delivery services. I think that CBD oils and cannabis has an absolute use medicinally. And I drink wine, so I know, it's like, but I don't drive drunk. It's like, and it's like, I'd like to make sure, it's all these moral obligations. Financially, we've got to make sure that if we can get something from it, great. However, like you, $277 a month isn't, and I don't think the feds are coming after Angels Camp. Sorry, we are the smallest potatoes in the bunch. We're at the bottom. They're going to go for the big money if they ever do go for anything. So there's a lot to be discussed. There's many different aspects, and it's something that I think is going to be an ongoing discussion for quite some time.
May I interject before you all, I know you all want to comment, but one outcome from tonight that would be helpful to me is to know what you want me to come back with, or other staff. I mean, I assume Mike and Bird Dog getting information from other staff or other resources, so I'm happy to do that, but one outcome from tonight, I appreciate I'm writing down your comments, but if you could give me some clear direction, something specific.
Somebody asked for
Personally-
information on.
Yeah, personally, I'd like to know
small
if
cities.
insurance covers in the event that there was an issue.
Okay.
I also think for our city, growing is not the issue. We don't have enough land to be a growing. If we're going to participate in this in any way, it would probably have to be through some kind of a distribution center. So maybe a little bit more about how that would work. Whether it could be leased, put on the Hydrox property right next to the police station, get some security out there. Smile time.
That's no joke.
You can get lease, you can get rental income that way. That doesn't affect the GAN limit. And, so just if you focus on this, on the effects of maybe a distribution center.
Okay, distribution center.
And that would allow us to regulate, that would allow us to become part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And, maybe we even tell them that, you gotta, if you sell it out of distribution, it's gotta go out of county or out of the city, don't sell it around here. But,
The cash flow problem that comes through, I think that's
Yeah.
really important because of banks.
Well, there's actually some
if there's
cities that are
anything,
exploring point of sale deliveries where it's cashless, it has to be cashless.
Right.
Right.
So, I can cash delivery issues. Obviously, I will, when I come back, and I'll come back as soon as I can, I'll obviously update you on the state grant issue if we get any clarity there.
I think our people have spoken as far as, I don't think the majority of people want it grown. They don't want to see it, they don't want to smell it, they don't want to be around it. So whatever is, if we're going to participate in this area at all, it has to be pretty covert, or not covert's not the word. Indoors, out of sight, Anyway, I'm done.
Okay, can I comment? Or do you want to comment first?
I do. I'm not sure
Why don't you
this
comment
document
first?
you showed me had the data in it, but
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
just like to see some kind of a projection from a small town.
Mhm.
It says, if you've got a business and it generates 10,000 a month in sales, what's that mean to Angels Camp? And, multiplied by how many businesses there might be, I'd hate for that to be the anchor client on Main Street, but,
Yes.
Okay.
you got to have the data. I mean, if it's $20,000 and it's over the course of a year, then who cares? You know what I'm saying?
I can bring that back.
Thank you.
My thought about this, knowing human nature, is that lawlessness begets lawlessness. And as we read for the Denver situation, increase of crime is, and this is something that Chief Fordall gave us, showing how it just kind of explodes. And I've seen this in my life, where something starts out really nice and small, but it's illegal, and it explodes. And then you're dealing with violence, and you can't control it. And I saw the riots in the 60s and was in the middle of all that. And so lawlessness begets lawlessness, and You know, James Madison said men aren't angels, and that's why we need government. And that's pretty much the basis of our system, is we need government to control, to keep people from violating laws, and then democracy falls into chaos, and then you have to have a dictatorship. So throwing out a little government stuff in here. So so I'm looking at it that the people in Angels Camp have voted against it. 54% don't want it. I personally see the majorities will, and I've talked to some people, you know, not everybody, of course, but, you know, talking to folks, and they said, you know, they'd rather have an increase in their sales tax than have marijuana, because you also have the influence on, in our town, it's so hard to put anything anyplace that students aren't going to be around it and walking by it. And then you're going to say, oh, we're going to use 60% of the money to go tell students not to smoke marijuana before they're 21, and that's a state law. But that we're violating the federal law, and so do what we say, but don't do what we do. I just think it is something having to do with principle, and sometimes we just should live by principle rather than be bribed by the state to do something, which in the end, they weren't going to give us the money, guys. I have been on a school board, I've been involved in it. They don't give you the money, they just hold back. So, you know, in the end, you're going to put yourself out there and upset a whole lot of people in Angels Camp, and then you're not going to get the money out of it, and your prime will probably go, and so we'll have problems. That's what I consider. And then I have to say, if I was in the police, and I was told that I couldn't enforce the laws of the federal government, you know, right now, we made an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I mean, I have to say, I believe when I say I defend the Constitution of the United States, I take that seriously. You know, I might be square, you know, but I do take that seriously. I just feel like, nah, I'm not going there. There's other options. I found that in life. I never have to be desperate for money that I go and do something illegal. That's the way it is.
I have.
Go ahead, no.
Okay, so one thing I appreciate what Todd gave us, but there was also a follow-up to the article, and the information that was provided in our packet was actually a couple of weeks later. It was stated that all of those numbers were loose figures, and it was actually, the crime was driven up by the population, not directly marijuana related. And so I'm saying that mainly because we need to make sure that whatever we get in front of us, we need to do our due diligence. And this was a follow-up article to the one that was provided us in our packet. And so I think we just need to be reminded that it's so easy to blame what we see happening out here, but we also have to remember that we just built another community in town. We have a bigger population coming in. There's things that are coming with it. The economy is getting better. People are spending money. They're coming up here for tourism. So before we start jumping to pin everything on what's happening at the county, we need to remember that there's all these other figures out here. And with that, you know, we've had a stream of revenue coming in because of the Butte Fire. The Butte Fire is now going down, and we need to remember that these peaks that we've seen are going to start continuing going down. So these numbers the last couple of years have been great, but they're not numbers that we need to look to depend on. And so with that, I would really like to find out more about the GAN limit from Julie on, do we consider not just the cannabis, but other industries to maybe break our GAN limit and take it back to the vote to the people, and what is the risk in that? You know, what is the penalty that we could look in to do to see how that option is? Because I would really hate to start doing a campaign on sales tax and then come back and we've lost both. I'm not against the sales tax increase. We need to do that with the other issues that are happening with transportation and self-help cities and counties, but I don't want to stay so focused just on sales tax that we forget to look at the GAN limit. I would also like to see, what about research? We're so close to major universities. If we lease out say the wastewater field, what we're entitled to utilize, can there be something that's set up to do research on recycling water? With water being an issue, we're all talking about, it taking up the water. What about finding out what a research center is here on the industry to use recyclable water? And is that something that we can take advantage of with UC Merced or UOP or even Berkeley or UC Davis? We're so close to all these agricultural identities that it would be beneficial for us to take advantage of it. And then I would also actually like to find out more from PD and Steve on what is the really on-the-ground impact to them with a city of our size of enforcement. I mean, what are we really looking at with our stats? And going forward with some of the decisions that we're going to start having to make with budget, what is reality versus our wishes of what we think reality is going to be going forward. And I really would like, because we can sit here, we think we know, but they're on the ground, and I would really like more input and more of a breakdown of what we're looking at. So when we make these decisions, they're something that you guys can work with, or, because the more feedback we get from staff, the better I think we can make a decision that can be implemented properly. To the best that we can.
Scott, I was wondering, I didn't know, since Chief Wardle gave us the Denver DA thing, and it was mentioned that, there's opposition or other information, I wondered if he might want to, or do we want to do that tonight, where if he wanted to give us some of the questions you just brought up tonight, or did we want to wait?
And I thought, this is a workshop, so I'm welcome if they have comments. If not, then we can plan for later.
If he's willing.
Good evening. Some of the stuff that you're asking, I don't know that I can provide the answers to you. For the simple fact that we don't know exactly what the impacts are going to be. Depending on what we're talking about. If we're talking about distribution, if we're talking about, obviously, in my mind, from a practical standpoint, any distribution center is something that's going to be a target for criminal activity. There's people out there that plan these things, and that's what they do, and that's how they make their livelihood. So, those are all hypotheticals that I don't really feel comfortable addressing without knowing specifically what it is that you're considering and what you're looking at. So I know these are hard decisions, and I don't envy being in your position. From a practical standpoint, like I said, I can just share with you a recent experience. Realistically, what happens in the county, and what the county decides to do, and what the state decides to do does have an impact on us locally, whether we want to bury our heads in the sand and pretend that it doesn't or not. It's a reality. I'm not here to advocate one way or the other. I'm in the position that I'm in, and it's a very clear, easy decision for me based on the federal conflict. So that's just kind of where I'm at from a personal standpoint, how I look at it. If the activists and lobbyists really want to do some good, in my opinion, they could take all the money or a lot of the money that they make and continue the fight in Washington, D.C. and try and get the laws changed at the federal level to take it off the CSA and change that. That would be a good place to start, and would eliminate all this conflict and all this dilemma and these issues that we're all facing. Just yesterday, we got a call of an assault with a firearm that occurred in the city. Went to the residence and contacted the individual that was responsible. He, through his own admission, told me that he moved here from Orange County specifically to partake in the commercial cannabis trade. Industry in the county. He chose Angels Camp for whatever reason for his residence, but he's working on a farm somewhere out in the county, on the county farm. During the course of interviewing him, and this was the suspect, by the way, in the assault with the firearm, who was arrested and booked for those charges. But he also had 57 plants growing in his home in Angels Camp. So it tied the two officers, myself and one other officer that was working, tied us up for quite a while yesterday afternoon dealing with that. So it's one example. I mean, I'm sure I could, there's plenty of people out here that could share all kinds of positive stories about how much money it's going to bring and all that other stuff. But I don't deal in hypotheticals. I deal with the black and white. And the black and white is that federal government says no. And much like Ms. Herman said, I took an oath, and I don't relish the idea or the thought of being put in a position where I'm going to be forced to be in direct violation of that oath. There's things that were mentioned that I understand, are temporarily in place, but the law is still the law, and it hasn't changed yet. So, we could talk about all kinds of different laws out there that people disagree with and think that are, outdated or irrelevant or what have you. The only other thing I would mention from my own research into this matter, for an unbiased, and I hope it's mentioned, I didn't have a chance to review the report before tonight, so I apologize, but for an unbiased opinion on some of the impacts and some of the dangers associated with what we're talking about, there's a medical reference that's out there that's readily available that I bought a copy of off of Amazon. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and it talks specifically about psychosis and issues related to high THC levels and withdrawal symptoms that medical professionals that have no dog in this fight, as you said, are experiencing and treating based on people that have classic withdrawal symptoms from using high level THC potent marijuana. So those are costs that are all, again, unknown factors. You start talking about all these things, these are all things that you folks that are making the decisions need to consider, because it's going to have an impact one way or the other. So I know that there's money out there that is set aside for treatment and education and all those things, but there's still the issue of it being an issue. So you have to make those decisions, and like I said, I don't envy you at all. So if you have any other questions, I don't really have anything else to say, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Doug.
All right.
Thank you.
So I think I have a lot of,
I just want to kind of add regarding code enforcement. Like in a lot of big cities, code enforcement officers carry guns and they are actual officers, peace officers. In our case, it's not. Our code enforcement is based on the complaint driven. So if Steve were to walk in on something with a guy with a 57 plant house, like in that example, police officers would have to be called, and it would add a major impact to code enforcement with our one code enforcement officer if things like that were happening. So, I mean, you saw what he has right now on the code enforcement, and stumbling on something like that, which, we get complaints regarding the smell if they have greenhouses, if it's outside. So it could. I mean, theoretically, it could have a major impact. And I would not want to send our code enforcement officer out there in those types of situations without definitely bringing a police officer or something with it. So it would be a dual cost for code enforcement, because we would have to take police out there with us. So just for
even if they had a permit. So let's just say we do the permit process and someone takes a permit out. Would code enforcement still need the backup of PD to adhere to a permit?
Yeah, they would have to. If we got a complaint,
Why do they have to? Who says they have to?
What?
Code enforcement will go out. Why do you need a cop?
Well, because just for safety purposes, we would, in that type of situation, we would do that. In terms of a permit, then the city would have the authority to revoke the permit based on the violation of the permit. So if it was a use permit process, and they were only allowed to grow 12 plants, and we went out there and found they were growing 5,800 plants, then we could, based on the ordinance, because the ordinance would have a penalty phase if you were in a revocation process, as all our other conditional use permits, we would definitely build that into the code as part of a use permit, that we could then revoke their permit based on the violations.
Okay.
So, but for the initial assessment of the code, what the enforcement is, yeah, he would go out there. If he saw that there was an issue that he needed to go, he would either come back to me and say, yeah, they got 57 plants, we need to go look at their permit, how much are they allowed? And if it's more of a criminal part of it, then he would have to bring in the police. So yes, I'm not going to send him
So
out there.
essentially the initial setup of, I'm asking because I'm
Yeah.
trying to wrap my brain around the cost associated, if we're going
Well, I mean,
forward with anything.
just the number of hours, what we can do is we can calculate the number of hours just on one code violation, just a general code violation, to give you an idea of what the costs are, of our costs, police costs, Derek's costs, in terms of just a zoning or a complaint that we've gotten, so that you can just get an idea on that one complaint of how much cost is rammed in there. I mean, if that's what you guys, we could probably do that with
Well,
some of
and
the
that would
complaints
also
we
help
have.
in doing further research if we do go a permit, any type of permit. Yeah, those are data that we can utilize. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So I feel like I've gotten good direction at this point.
Well, I got some comments. First of all, you're looking about your finances, you spend on the most expensive man, the lawyer, to do these studies. You invite the cannabis people in who are experts, who can tell you where to go and help you get all this information. You're just digging in the dirt and going nowhere. You're willing to take, you mentioned Calaveras Lumber, you want to give back the sales tax of the millions of dollars of the cannabis money that was spent there because it's dirty? Well, you're not accomplishing anything and coming to any conclusions with some of what you're going through. You got people with answers and solutions. It's all laid out. Why pay this man? Last year, you paid him to make an ordinance to ban, which is just great, didn't do any good. You got code enforcement. Code enforcement uses common sense. They knock on the door and say, hey, you got 8 plants, you got to get rid of a couple of plants or we're going to come back and take them all. You don't need to make a big deal out of it. They don't need hours of time to code enforce in this town. You're creating the problem, you're not trying to solve the problem, and you should be able to get some other, and he should be able to, the lawyer should be able to get you some information of where these people are to get these studies. You give them 3 minutes, invite them over. He invites the cannabis people over here. You give them 3 minutes to talk, and then they can't explain any of the, they could answer almost every question you're asking, probably, because they spend their life doing it. So, and if you're going to raise taxes, I'm not going to pay taxes when you have other resources to possibly make the money. And even if you don't have anything in town, the surrounding towns they're going to gain from it, and they're going to get benefit from it. So you need to figure out, they can tell you what you're going to make almost and how you're going to get, and the grant money, the state doesn't come through or something. State comes through, just maybe not at your convenience, government convenience. They're trying to get the money when they want it, but they've laid out in the budget how much is going to be in all these different categories, and anyway, you come down here and you're just talking and you're not solving anything. And so I got to listen to it, and I want you to listen to me.
I appreciate that, Tad, but I think the fact that we're here having this discussion, having this workshop, shows us that our minds are open to a situation that few of us understand. And until the private sector actually comes up with a plan and says, hey, this is what we would like to do, we are spinning our wheels, because we're trying to look at the entire picture and all these different possibilities and what could possibly happen, and we don't have any specifics in front of us. We've got nobody that's coming up and saying, I specifically want to do this, and this is how it's going to work, and, but we're here discussing it, we're here educating ourselves, and we are at least doing that.
I just want to mention that public comment is over. There was an opportunity for the public to come up and speak, and then came back to council. So I'm sorry, but the public comment is done.
I have a point of order. I'm here to listen to these people. You asked them to come and listen.
Tad, they had an opportunity. Everybody was given an opportunity to talk.
Are you in a hurry to go home? Why not make an exception and overrule that?
Because we are coming back.
You can't overrule it, so we...
They will be coming back with additional information for the council.
Yeah, we are gathering information. We will come back and we'll have further discussion again. But I'm finding the whole thing tiresome because, again, we're not talking about any specifics. We're not talking about proposals. We're not talking about possible use permits. We're talking about theoretical stuff that's out there, and we're learning more all the time, but until...
But you should be making the rule about the 3 minutes, not a city administrator. I want to hear it from the mayor, and you need to tell us to sit down and shut up. That's not right to get off on a woman like that with a job.
Thanks, Tad.
Okay. Any further discussion here? Or have we beat this thing to death tonight?
Well, I definitely will have to say that I do not want to keep having this roundtable. So when we meet again, whether it's the next month or the month before, I want to have something set in line so we're not dragging staff around doing 5 different researches. And I get it, this is informational, but to be honest, I didn't learn anything more than hypotheticals and more constitutional law. But I want to see something, and I want something brought before us so we can go forward. I don't know.
How do we go forward without private sector stepping up and making a proposal? We aren't going to...
By setting an ordinance, by setting a guideline for the private sector to come in. If we don't set anything, how do you expect the private sector to invest in anything? I mean, we have to make an initial decision for that. We got to meet the private sector halfway. If we're not going to do anything, then fine, then let's just go ahead and hell with it. But if we don't make some kind of decision to go forward with it, the private sector is never going to be interested because we've already put a target on Angels that we're not interested. We made it very clear at the last meeting when we banned the dispensary, or banned where they wanted to go. So we need to make an initiative, whether we go this route or that route, and go forward with it. And I'm hoping that by the next meeting, we'll have X, Y, and Z, and then from there, we can start making a decision. Because we just keep going round and round and round.
Well, somebody's going to need to come up with a proposal then, because right now the ban that we voted on does stand. Our ordinance, our laws, there's a ban on cultivation and production of marijuana, period.
Exactly.
If that ordinance is to be changed, then a proposal needs to be brought forward. And
that's our job as policymakers to go forward and initiate that change.
if that's the will of the council, you're right.
Yeah. And so if we're going to sit here and go round and round and not make a decision on what route we're going to go, whether to change or not change, we're never going to make the deadline. And then we're going to have to accept the fact that we're now under the state law and we have no chance to go back. So we need to figure out what avenue we're going down. And as policymakers, that is our job. That's why we're sitting up here right now, to do that. And if we can't do that, then none of us should be up here.
So what exactly are you proposing?
Proposing that we come up based on this.
We have our policies in place.
Exactly, and but we have just been discussing a manufacturing that now ripple effects to changing an ordinance that's already in existence. So if that's the route we need to go, then we need to tell staff that we want them to explore how to change that to encumber a manufacturing. If we're not, then we need to direct staff to say we're going the complete bare minimum of 64, and this is the staff report we want back. I mean, we're not doing them any favors by running them around in circles with no clear direction of what avenue we want to go. I mean, he has what stuff that we want answered, but what is that going to do to us? What are we going to mold that into if we're all...
Well, until somebody has a proposal, you're right, there's nothing to discuss.
So
We're trying to educate ourselves on a very complicated situation.
That we still have to make a decision on.
And if we make no decision, what happens?
The state will come in and we will not have to follow Prop 64, the state law.
The ban will stay in place,
Yeah.
and we won't have any state funding for enforcement. That's what happens, is my understanding, if we don't do anything. So that's a possibility.
Yeah.
So now, if there's a specific proposal, or if there's an idea someone has to bring to the plate, bring it up. But we're sitting there spinning our wheels we're up here trying to figure out all this stuff and how it's going to affect if one little thing over here, one little thing over here happens.
But what do we want? What do we want as policymakers? That's what I'm trying.
So far, our
And
want-
so all I hear is a ban, and that's fine. But we need, if
That's
what.
our current, we, as a council, we voted in a ban, that's our current ordinance. If there's a change to be made in that, then something needs to be brought up specifically with specific facts that says this is what we want to do. I've already said, I'm open to, like, a distribution center, for example, I'm open to looking at that. If someone wants to bring a detailed proposal up that we can look at, we can look at it. But for us to sit here and spend more time and more energy discussing something without anybody stepping forward and saying, I want to do this specifically.
So then my understanding is that we want to wait until a private sector comes in, makes a proposal on a city that already has a ban, to then go from there to change the policy.
Or if you want to bring something forward, we can look at that too.
You could bring something and propose it, and then
I think I have, month after month after month.
Then we can make a motion, and we can decide whether we want to change the law, the other ordinance that we have, or if we want to move in the direction that you have come and.
Well, then we can make a motion tonight.
You have to agendize.
If that's what you're saying.
You have to agendize.
Yeah.
You have to agendize.
No, we can make a motion tonight to
No.
agendize the next meeting to have something. I'm saying that back, not in all serious. I'm saying that back because if that's the case, then we should have done this months ago, and that would have been on the agenda. But nobody can,
Done what?
if you're saying that somebody just needs to bring something up, then there's probably a door out the line of many people that want to come and
So
bring a
you think if
business.
you brought up an ordinance right now, say I want to remove the ban, you think that would fly right now without specific ideas or numbers or, I mean,
But that's what we're doing now.
Well, we're trying to put together,
We're
you
having a
know,
discussion
we're trying to
and
put
trying to
together
learn.
because you'd have to pull together different facts of saying, this is why we should, and persuade all of us, or persuade me, I guess, but persuade, and say, this is where I think we should go as a city. And therefore, I want to make a motion whether that we get rid of the ban or remove it, but we'd have to agendize it and discuss it, and go over the facts and then vote.
Mayor, can you reopen the public meeting, because there might get some comments from to help you get some better direction on where you're going.
So,
I really don't want to repeat this meeting again, and so I would rather hear what everyone has to say now, or spend another 3 meetings.
Amanda, I'm just, I guess, being staff here, as I am a little confused. I think if you want to bring an ordinance back, what the rest of council is saying, they want some more information to decide if it needs to be brought back. What is the impact the city's going to have? Because right now, there is a ban.
No, but
You
this
can bring the ordinance back. You can vote to bring it back if there's a certain change you want to make, but you're going to have them agree with you. And I think what the problem is they need some more information. I know you don't want to come back, but.
And I understand that. What I'm saying is that if we're going to make those decisions, this should have been a better presentation. Because we can sit here and read and read and read, and we don't we're basing everything on hypotheticals again. So either we need to make a concrete, I don't know, it's tiresome.
I agree.
I agree, but I also thought that was mainly what it was
Trevor, real quick,
hypotheticals.
because you've already been there.
Okay. All I wanted to say is if you guys want to have a stakeholders group or any working group, CCA will have members and we will participate. If you need any input from industry, we would love to participate. We'd love to sit down with the police chief, all the affected stakeholders here in the city, and try and craft real regulations that work. And so if a working group is what comes out of this or is an idea that sits well with you, CCA is totally down and we can provide people.
Okay, thank you.
I like that.
My name is Patrick Sullivan. I have a PhD in soil chemistry, and I've been involved with laboratories and laboratory testing for 47 years. I live in halfway between Murphy's and Angels Camp off Murphy's Grade Road. I'm not a grower. I haven't done anything other than environmental work here in the county. And I am right now in the process of getting just about $5 million in funding to develop a outstanding analytical laboratory that will cost just about $3 million to build. I would like to do it in Calaveras County. However, it's not a county that is amenable right at the moment to that process. And so I'm actually working with some people in Oakland that have green zone property where I can actually build distribution, laboratory, and manufacturing in one location and do testing for all pesticides that potentially can occur in cannabis, so that we have absolutely a premium product, not just the minimum testing the state is going to allow. You need to realize that the new cannabis regulations for medical cannabis, every 10 pounds of cannabis has to be tested. Every 10 pounds. You know how many thousands and hundred thousands of pounds are going to be produced in California? Laboratories are going to be a real money-making generator, and so will manufacturing. I'm going to disagree with the sheriff or
Police chief. Chief of police.
Chief of police on the distribution, because no one wants to operate a distribution center that has tons of cannabis in it. Makes absolutely no sense. Then you're a target for federal operations. What you want is a well-managed system where your supply and demand means that you're taking product, testing it, packaging, distribution, you're certifying the product so that it's absolutely certified pure, and shipping it out, and you're doing it in such a fashion that you do not have large amounts of material. Not only that, you have security. You have security services that would have people on site. You have, outside, inside cameras, all of those things that are necessary to operate an organization where you're not going to have crime. This is potentially a very big market. I'm not talking about growing. You don't have to have growing to make a lot of money in this business. There are other things that can be done. And I'm not sure what I'm going to eventually end up doing, whether I end up in Oakland or whether I end up living up here and building a laboratory in this location. But this is a good location, as long as cannabis is not banned in the county.
Hi, my name is Ryan Skelly. I just wanted to more or less provide some information, some questions that you guys had brought up in the process. One, your question was about whether things can be tracked as far as people being licensed. With this Prop 64, from the time it's a seed to the time it is sold, there is a track and trace system that is developed that also will track the licensing of each individual. Back to the money, that I think that's where your frustration is that what money would be generated. I think somebody said earlier, you're not going to have a cultivation issue because your town limits are too small. So you're not going to have some of the problems that you're seeing cultivation related. You're not probably going to have that within your town, because you're probably still going to have just whatever someone under the law of medical can still do, which is not where you see your big problems. But back to what potential income could be, you can put up to a 15% excise, the excise tax that's already built into 64. I don't know if you still have to have a special election since it's already built in. I don't think that you would. So an average dispensary of people that had, say one that had 30 to 40 people going in a day, which is not uncommon, that would probably generate anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 a year for a city that had a legal dispensary. And that's using very modest numbers to get to that. The second thing is, in Prop 64, you cannot ban deliveries. So anyone can get on their computer, make an order out of Modesto, have it delivered here in 30 minutes. Currently, you can ban those. Come 2018, you cannot ban those. If there's any other questions you guys might have on Prop 64, I'd be happy to try to help out in answering some of those.
I thought that when reading it, that
Right.
there wasn't, we could regulate that and say no.
Cannot.
Is that something that's coming?
It
Why
is
is it
explicitly
waiting
in
till-
there that
Oh,
cities
really?
cannot ban delivery services.
Interesting.
Patient access.
What's that?
It's about patient access. That, you know, if you have a citizen here that needs access.
The microphone. It's all having to do with medical?
Yeah.
Not with recreational?
Correct, you can ban that.
You can ban recreational.
Deliveries.
Deliveries. Oh, okay, so I thought so. So we can ban recreational, but we can't ban medical.
Are you 100% on that?
I'm correct, that's correct.
Because I,
The Prop 64 is very clear that we can ban door-to-door deliveries. That's very clear.
Just medical.
You can ban deliveries.
I think there might be contradiction.
Well, there's
ban transportation.
Yeah, there's,
and so
no,
that's
we
the-
can't stop people from driving through the city,
Yeah.
and then there's legislation now that's being considered to deal with mail and overnight services and other deliveries, and that's evolving. The door-to-door, the drive-up door-to-door deliveries to a residence in Angels Camp, we can say no to that. We can't stop someone from driving through here if they're going from Tuolumne or Sonora to, San Andreas.
Is that medical as well, or no?
There's
Is
an exception for medical, yeah.
Can we tax that, even though, I mean, if somebody's buying it within the city limit, can we incorporate some kind of fee or require a business license or permit to be able to do that delivery? Or is it because it's
Yeah, I
medical?
believe our business license is pretty broad, so,
I'm just asking for capturing of any type of revenue. I mean, if they're gonna be making.
well, our
like-
business license is a regulatory license though, so we don't really make revenue off our business license. Or it's kind of a complicated issue because we have a locked-in business license that's beyond any challenge. And I think it does bring in a little revenue, but if we raise, so it's kind of a complicated question. I mean, it kind of goes back to what we're talking about. We could try to come up with numbers, but right now, I would say it'd be a very small amount of revenue if it means anything, the business license.
For the CCA people, are you aware of any position that FedEx or UPS has taken on materials passing through their systems?
I believe that they
Can you come to the?
I don't believe it's currently permissible for FedEx or UPS to.
That's because of its status
Uh,
as a banned substance at the federal level?
Yes, and because of the shipping aspect of it. So, in-state courier services, I know have been used, and I believe that there are some in-state courier services that are not specifically delivery services, but are simply package couriers. Those in-state providers have provided the service, whereas UPS and FedEx, if they find it, it could be confiscated.
I have a question for the gentleman in regards to the laboratory, if you could come up. I have about this much knowledge.
Okay.
But you spoke of the lab and building this. Potentially, what are you looking at in regards to square footage, and then what is your business projection in regards to dollars that you would be generating? I look at that and I think, wow, we've got a lot of open land and we've got a lot of buildings.
Right now, we're looking at just about 11,000 square feet for the laboratory. You're talking about pesticide analysis, microbiology, moisture, material that shouldn't be there that you have to look at with a microscope, et cetera. So about, and terpenes, potency, all of those. One laboratory has to do all the testing. When a distributor hires a laboratory, so then you have, everything has to be in one location, so about 11,000 square feet.
How many people?
Probably about 10, all professionals, PhD, masters, bachelor's level. The projection for the first year, assuming, right now I'm working with a laboratory in Oregon, because none of the really excellent qualified laboratories in the state of California will do cannabis. Environmental microanalysis in Woodland, and then there's another lab in Fresno. They will not do analyses, but the labs up north will. And the one lab I'm working with is an agricultural lab, where they have the experience, where they can actually, they're used to working with the matrix. They're not just a laboratory that does soil and water analysis like most people who do pesticides. And as a result, they're extremely competent. They have agreed to work with me in terms of developing the lab here in California. So we bring that expertise and all of their qualifications in. And so we estimated in the first year in 2018 a net profit of about $3 million in 1 year. That's one laboratory.
And you'd consider staying here?
Well, once again, a lot's going to depend on what happens with the county and having product that can be brought in. But possibly, I'm going to say in the next 2 months, we'll make a decision in terms of whether we're going to stay here or go to Oakland. And then there's obviously your concentrates have a much greater problem with contaminants. And so not only do you have to test for contaminants in the flowers and the trim, but when they make concentrates, all of the pesticides get concentrated in the concentrate. And so it's critical that you have laboratory analysis of those materials. And really, we don't even have enough qualified laboratories in the state of California, once the laws come into effect, even to handle the demand that's going to occur. It's going to probably take 3 to 5 years to get the laboratory space up to where it can even be handled. But like I said, once again, it's every 10 pounds has to be tested. And if it fails, it's destroyed. Which then means you're going to have other pre-certification testing. It's just an absolutely huge market. It's just a matter of, it's going to be very difficult just meeting the demand. But yes, I would like to stay.
Is that unique to California, or is Colorado doing something simple?
Colorado has their own testing.
A similar process?
Well, it's taken time to develop. Oregon was a little more advanced in the process than Colorado. But basically, Oregon's had a horrible time. Just as an example, the lab that I'm working with in Oregon does testing for the state of Oregon. And what they've been doing is they've been going to dispensaries and taking product off the shelf and testing, and they found that 40% of all the products that are on a dispensary shelf that has already been certified by other labs not to have contaminants are contaminated. And what that shows is that there's not the necessary training. People haven't got the staff together yet to where they can handle it properly and get the proper quality control, quality assurance. And there are still issues with maybe materials being switched out by a dispensary and put on the shelf after it hasn't been tested. So there are issues that the state of California is trying to address with the track and trace, but clearly chain of custody, having tamper-proof materials, testing it, certifying that it is clean, and making sure that it has child-proof tops and all that kind of stuff, and properly labeled, so that the customer actually knows what they're getting. In fact, my company is called Certified Pure by Analysis. All of the data are actually put online, and a lot number goes on that product, so that if a customer buys that product, they can go to the website and actually see the data for that particular lot, and they know that there's nothing in it. Anyway, so.
Could I just ask one thing? I want to see the process. So somebody's growing it, goes to the lab, is that it, to be tested? That then goes to the distributor or the dispensary? Is that the same thing, a distributor or?
No, it's going to be set up on the alcohol model. So what that would mean is, once it comes into effect, a grower would sell their product to a distributor. The distributor is then responsible for hiring a laboratory. The laboratory goes to the grower, or I'm sorry, the product should have been delivered to the distributor.
Okay.
The laboratory comes in, they subsample and test the product.
Okay.
And then they come back to the distributor and say it passes.
Okay.
Or it doesn't pass. If it doesn't pass, the crop's destroyed. If it does pass, then the distributor can then package it, however they're going to package it, however they're going to market it, and then distribute to dispensaries.
Sell it to dispensaries, okay.
Correct.
And then the retail, okay.
So it's quality control.
That's all quite, and then the manufacturing is in the same loop, because the manufacturers have to have the same testing done, then those products have to go through the same process.
So can that be done from a grower to a transportation company to a distribution center, the lab, packaging? Can that all happen, can the testing, the packaging, the weighing, all that stuff happen under one roof?
It can.
And back out to a transport to take it to the
It can-
dispensaries?
It can, yes. There are different permits. So for example, if I get a laboratory permit, state permit, that's all I can do.
Okay.
That's it. The laboratory has to stay separate of everybody else. However, I can have business relationships with a distributor or a manufacturer and have agreements in terms of how those things operate. So you can be in one location. It's just a matter of how you work out your businesses. And in fact, that is the ideal circumstance, when you get a group of individuals together that can actually provide all of the services in one location. Then you have the ability to have uniform security and all of those things that you need to maintain everything. Almost like, I don't want to say a business park, but certainly buildings that are connected, and you don't have transportation issues between facilities as well.
And in our situation, if the county bans marijuana growth, then there's no distribution center up here at all. Doesn't
Yeah.
make sense.
Right.
That would be,
Is that-
well,
is-
not necessarily, because City Modesto and some of the other counties are looking more closely at it. It looks like Modesto may actually do something, so we may have more indoor grows. I wrote a massive report on the environmental impact report for the county, because that's what I've done my whole life as a profession. And I will tell you that that environmental impact report has major problems, and they may even have to go back and have to actually rewrite it. But in any event, it's clear to me, from what I've been hearing, that there is more of a tendency now towards regulation. And for all the years I've been up here, right now, this is the most confident I've ever been that the county may actually regulate as opposed to ban. I know there are a lot of people, ban, but with proper regulation, it can work. It's just a matter of getting those regulations written properly.
Thank you. I appreciate all your information.
Well,
I see a big business opportunity.
Okay. We're going to close the public comment. We're bringing it back here. Final. This item, I think, is close, so we'll move on to calendar.
Okay. Did we have any kind of action? I would like it formalized so she can write it down.
What's that?
What the action is on this?
It was a discussion, workshop,
Are you bringing it
information
back?
only.
Are you bringing it back? Or is he going to be sending you information? What is?
Is Jerry coming back with info or?
You've got a list of things that we asked them.
I think I have to.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
that
Just want to make
stuff.
sure it's
Just
formalized.
Informational only
Yeah.
report kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, more other information to come.
All right.
Okay, on our calendar, tomorrow's COG Technical Advisory Committee meeting was canceled, but we do have a 3 o'clock budget workshop here. We also have a 3 o'clock budget workshop on Thursday here. And then there's a food truck festival on the 25th. Maybe if you get there early, you'll be able to get some food.
There's going to be more than, more
Hopefully
food
there'll be
trucks.
more
food
trucks.
And 5:30 on the 27th is UWPA meeting, and a budget workshop starts at 4 o'clock. Then at 6 o'clock, there's a Planning Commission special meeting with a public hearing regarding the Main Street Plan. There is no city council meeting on the 4th, and COG meets on the 5th of July at 5:30. LAFCO,
I thought that was canceled.
Yeah, it got canceled. huh?
I didn't get that.
They don't meet July and January.
Okay. LAFCO at 6 PM on the 17th, and City Council here at 6 o'clock on the 18th.
And then Thursday is Central Sierra at 9:30.
Is that the 29th of June?
Could you ask her, Mallory, to send us every...
You want the agendas?
Yeah.
I sent it to you, but yes, I will do
Well, the
that.
schedule.
Oh, the schedule?
Meeting
Oh,
schedule.
it was changed to every month. Usually it's quarterly, but because of the changes with what, with the RFP that's happening this week, and then we had to edit our sheds, because of state guidelines, we've met more than we normally do. So right now, it's every month, every Thursday, every third Thursday. I will confirm that with Mallory on Thursday, though.
Are you talking about the 29th of June?
Yes, is that Thursday?
Okay.
Yes. I don't have a calendar in front of me.
Okay.
Yes.
That was the longest calendar we ever had. All right, motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
Aye.
Thank you.